To see what the final numbers here are on the Qs and SPY. All right, let's get started. Good afternoon. This is Ifan from the Strategic Day Trader, and this is your market wrap for February 24th, 2020. SPY looking to close down about 3.27. Qs down a little bit more at 3.76. Okay, big gap down in the Qs and SPY. What's interesting about the way that we've been following the market is that the hourly break has clued us into these big drops in the market, right? We were bearish on this day because it broke the hourly uptrend, and then we got that gap down, right? And coming into today, we were also bearish on the market. Market rolled over, broke the hourly trend. We were going to follow the hourly trend, right, and see how far it goes. We ended up getting a big gap down. Now, I didn't expect necessarily we'd get a big gap down today. And so, I'm not saying that I saw this coming, but that following the hourly trend has been very helpful in having the right expectation, right? So especially if, you're looking at holding swings overnight, knowing whether or not to expect the market to be bullish or bearish going into the next day, I think has been pretty useful. Okay, so here we had the downtrend, was continuing the downtrend. We're going to follow it until it shows us that the hourly downtrend was over. Okay, so then of course the big question now is, what about going into tomorrow and the rest of the week? Okay, my expectation for the rest of the week is going to be neutral, okay, using today's high and low as our kind of line in the sand, okay? So neutral going into tomorrow. If we break out above today's high, I think we'll get a short-term rally, okay? We will get some retracement here back on the hourly. You can see the hourly base here. Okay, if we break out over today's high, probably higher. And then if that happens, what'll be interesting is if we get some kind of retracement, and I drew it out for you guys at the end of the day there, if you're in the strategic day trader room, right? If we get a lower high after rallying and then we start to roll over, we get that sell set up, right? And then we can start to talk about a nice daily downtrend forming, the weekly potentially topping out, and the monthly potentially topping out, right? So we've been waiting to see if we can actually get some follow through on a daily downtrend, right? Because daily is going to inform us about the next days and weeks, just like we've been using the hourly to inform us about the next hours and days, right? So if we go lower tomorrow, it's going to be tough though. If we start to come in and we go lower tomorrow, we are at support. It's been a steep drop into support. So I think, inside bar or we start to move up are a little bit more likely, but we'll just be using today's range here kind of as our gauge. Okay, so above today's high, going to be going into for a moving into a more bullish short-term trend here. Okay, and then I think underneath today's low, still bearish, but it's going to be tough because we're into support. And then I wouldn't be surprised either we get a kind of a neutral day, okay, if we get an inside day, just because big drop, relatively wide range day, right? And so if you know what you're looking for in each of those three scenarios, right, then you're prepared. There's nothing else really that can happen tomorrow. We get a big gap down or big gap up that's still going to be outside of today's range, right? So, all right, so that's the read on tomorrow. I think the challenge here is that we did have a bearish bias, but the bearish bias got to the support, right? So what it does next, I think, is harder to tell. Okay, so just using today's range here to inform us what the next move is. Okay, now these days on market gap downs, plus or minus 2%, even sometimes 1.5% is a pretty big gap down in the market here, can be pretty difficult to trade. Okay, I've personally don't really like them. I find that even good gap downs that I find are going to be moving according to the market. So, today, for instance, right, market at the open got bought. Okay, that support that we identified on the daily on Friday, right, stepped up, and market got bought. Okay, and so what I prefer to do on days like this is kind of let things settle down and try to go after things that are most likely to be on their own page. Okay, so for instance, later in the morning, right, really only two ideas. One of them actually James called, which was the CNC. So when I was on the mic, there were only two ideas, two short ideas here. One was the CNC that James called here, right? And then they covered it down there. And then the KOS. And I have it highlighted here, so it is letting people know if you want to play this base breakdown, you can play this. Now the KOS had earnings, okay? So that was a nice additional catalyst, right? In addition to the market gapping down. The GPK, which I played, also was a call here for the room, was a 2-minute sell setup. They were issuing senior notes, which are essentially an issuance of debt. Okay, so we played it underneath 1440 by 1450 was the call. Okay, 1440 by 1450 right here. You can see we start the base right there, and then we rolled over. We did live through a pullback, which got pretty close to taking out the back half because we did take half, did get to our target one, and then that went to 1449, so a couple cents away from taking out our stop there, but then rolled back over, took another piece down here, and then the last piece trailed out there. And so one thing that you can see is very different about this GPK, right? And this is so it trailed over this bar, is that while the market was getting bought, this was getting sold, right? This was getting hit. We did talk about a play that was in here. I thought it was a little bit too aggressive. I did pass, although it did work, and I played this one in here. And so, that relative weakness also helps to confirm, okay? So when the market is neutral or the market isn't gapping, the market is mostly unchanged or just doing this grind higher, right? There's less question about is something doing something special? Is it going to be on its own page? Right? There's less issue with, especially any kind of gap down when the market's grinding higher. But when the market's gapping down, like it was today, you're going to have a lot of things that also gap down are just going to do some kind of variation of the market, right? And so if you don't get the market right, which was this morning to see it get bought, then almost doesn't matter how good the gap was. It's just going to follow the market. So on days like today, when we get large gaps in the market, the first thing for me is I want to be as selective as possible, okay, in playing the gaps, and then also try to find those additional catalysts, okay? Because, normally if the market's gapping up or, unchanged and something else we find is gapping down 2 or 3%, there's usually a reason, and the catalyst, we don't really need to look too much into it because it's gapping down for a reason, okay? But on days like today where the market's gapping down big, it's a little bit additional confirmation to figure out what those catalysts are or to go after something that has one. So I thought, the things, and someone said this in the room today in the afternoon that they thought that the things that we called, like the GPK, the CNC was the other thing that was called, was the best stuff that they saw all day, and so, that tells me that, based on the stuff that I was scanning, and of course, a lot of stuff that I was passing on, right? I was going after and focusing on the right thing. That's the tough thing about days like today where the market's gapping down big, is that there's a lot gapping down, and so there's a lot of potential plays out there, right? But most of them are going to be market dependent, okay? So, hopefully today you did well. If not, kind of took it easy because, like I said, I don't have any problem admitting that days like today where the market's gapping down or up more than 2% are not the days where I want to be too active. Okay. Now, most days that's not the case. So, and it could be that maybe if this became the norm, market was gapping up down 2% all the time, that I would probably get more comfortable with it, that I'd be better at selecting plays in this environment. But just in the past, I've known that I've experienced that, the market gap's down big, maybe I go after something that's a really nice gap, but the market gets bought just like it did this morning, and it just does what the market does. So today is the kind of day that I definitely don't want to overtrade, and so I thought we did a pretty good job today of being selective, right? Not getting into stuff or not making a mess of things, and going after things that for the most part were on their own page. You can see the GPK going to be a big wide range bar here on the daily, right? And KOS also closing there at the lows, so I thought on Friday we did a pretty good job as well, but on Friday we didn't have that big gap down to kind of complicate things. Okay, all right, so I hope you did well today. We'll be back at it tomorrow. All right, and I'll talk to you then. Hope you have a good evening.